Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Curseborne, or the Accursed. And it's been a little while since our last deep dive into a Damnation. I think it was a few weeks ago we were looking at our last one, and so I thought let's explore the Sorcerers. We've had quite a few requests for the Sorcerers. They are a very much in-demand lineage in this game. I think people love the idea of playing their mages, their spellcasters, their spellweavers, and so let's have a look at the Sorcerer systems for Curseborne. Remember, you can pre-order Curseborne right now. It is still available to pre-order in PDF and hard copy, and if you do so, you will immediately get the manuscript for the game. It will be available to you in the updates once you pre-order. So, Sorcerers are a very interesting blend of ideas in Curseborne. You see, they're not all free-form magicians. They don't have a strict spell list or anything like that. Quite the contrary. They are a formula somewhere in between. One leading to the other, you could say. And at the Entanglement 1 to 4 tier of play, which is what's in the Curseborne core book, these are the abilities you have access to. First and foremost, one of the things that defines Sorcerers in Curseborne is sacrifice. Sorcerers are all about sacrifice. They're all about cutting bits off of themselves, cutting up their friends, disposing the contents of their wallet, burning a valuable piece of art, ruining a relationship, destroying their own reputation, doing something meaningful as a sacrifice to fuel their magic. And you see, Sorcerers are very much about addiction in this game. You will become addicted to basically weakening yourself so that you can have more and more magical power. You will lose what makes you human in order to make yourself the most powerful sorcerer. And sacrifice is a fundamental part of this. You see, mechanically speaking, a sorcerer can spend a scene, any scene in the game, where they are sacrificing something of meaning to them and gain a curse die. And if this sacrifice inconveniences the rest of the group, a momentum as well. Now, I've already mentioned some things that might be meaningful. When you do so and you gain your curse die, you may take the loss status effect, for example, because you've lost something physical. You may have taken an injury or an alternative status effect such as exhausted because it was a physical drain, or dazed for mental impairment, you sacrificed a memory, or unlucky, which is a fantastic status effect that could be applied to most any curse-based mechanism in this game. But it's a very simple system. As characters need curse dice to fire off a great many of their abilities, the possibility of being able to sacrifice something to gain additional curse dice is quite potent in this game. Now, we'll get back to sacrifice in a bit because it ties into their damnation. Any sorcerer can sacrifice anything, regardless, not irregardless, regardless of your accursed family. You can sacrifice anything of meaning to gain that curse die. That is as it is. But the damnation gets a little more specific, as we'll get into. Before we get there, though, let's talk about fast casting, because sometimes you really need to cast a spell fast. Sometimes you don't have the chance to prepare, and sometimes, indeed, you hold 0 curse dice, and you don't have the time to sacrifice something to gain curse dice. So what's your option then? You can fast cast. Now, fast casting is where you want to cast a spell where you don't have where you have 0 curse dice, but you need more than 0 to do it. That's absolutely fine. You will just suffer a moderate complication on the roll. Moderate complication means you need to score an additional 2 hits on your roll to not get affected by said complication. So that's an additional 8, a 9, or a 10, for example. Because 10s count as 2 hits. Now, not all spells have a dice pool. Some are immediate and automatic effects. So in the case of fast casting, if there is no dice pool, every single different spell attunement, a bit like a spell class or spell group, has 2 recommended dice pool skills. So, for example, if it's an elemental skill, or an elemental spell, I should say, you would be rolling enigmas or science with an appropriate attribute. If it's emotional, you'd be rolling empathy or persuasion with an appropriate attribute. If it's liminal, enigmas or esoterica with an appropriate attribute. So it goes for all the different spell attunements: magical, physical, psychic, ruin, and support. Now, some of you will be aware from the Curseborne manuscript that some of those names have changed, but It is all clarified in the core book, I can confirm. Now, if you don't buy off the complication when you fast cast, that means the spell has gone awry. Maybe an ally takes an injury. Maybe the spell targets someone that you didn't intend. Maybe the status effect you suffer is slightly more significant than the one you got from your sacrifice, and you are now suffering agony. Or the spell burned and blew up in your face, so you're now burning. Or maybe you're now distracted and you have the frayed temper status effects. Or you now have a magical parasite inside you, and so you have the infected status effect. What's more, if you try a second fast cast in the same scene, let's say you're being bombarded with enemies, you're in a liminality, it's a terrible place, the rest of your crew are on the ropes, it's down to you, so you need to fast cast a couple of times. The next time you do it, that moderate complication goes up to major. So now you need 3 hits. Now, there'll be some sorcerers who get built in this game for specific purposes. So, for example, if I'm playing an enchanter type from, let's say, the premier family of sorcerers, it's highly likely I'll have several dots in skills like persuasion and empathy. What that means is when I'm fast casting emotional spells, so spells with the emotional attunement, what that basically means is I'm always going to have a pretty decent dice pool. But sometimes, just sometimes, you're going to be using spells that are outside of your character's area of expertise. And that's where the fun begins. That's where the complications start adding up and the status effects that follow. Now, sorcerers are very, very good at spellcasting, as you can probably imagine. And one of the things they can do is spell mimicry. If they see a spell cast in the same scene, they can copy that spell. They must have and be able to bleed 1 curse die in order to mimic someone's spell. So if a spell usually has a cost of bleed 2 curse dice, that's a pretty powerful spell. If you're mimicking it, it requires you to bleed 3 curse dice. And from entanglements 1 to 4, which is what the Curseborne core book covers, so you get entangled in curses up to the 4th tier, you can only mimic spells that either have the Sorcerer tag or the shared attunement for any lineage. It doesn't have to be a Sorcerer spell, as long as it has the shared attunement on it, then you can mimic it quite happily. Otherwise, you need to meet any prerequisites might be for the spell, such as entanglement, curse dice for activation, and when you cast a spell in this way, it always comes with the fast cast moderate complication. So spell mimicry isn't going to be something you hammer out every single time, because there are costs associated with the additional curse die, the fact that there's going to be a moderate complication involved. But again, put your sorcerer in the position where they are greatly at risk, where they're having to save the rest of their crew. This is maybe a time where you need to mimic a healing spell, for example, that you've got very little knowledge of. What's more, you can use these spells to sometimes mimic adversaries' dread powers and qualities, but that's something to look into later, I would suggest. So, moving on from there, let's get on to their damnation, after all it is in the title of this video. Not skipping over the fact that sorcerers have inheritances as well. Every single major path for sorcerers, whether you choose sorcerer as your major path or your various families as your major path, every single one of them has a different inheritance. And we'll go into some of them when we do a sorcerer character creation video. When it comes to damnation, every sorcerer has a burning desire to use her magic in any situation. The more you use the magic, the more you want to keep using it. And anytime your cursed dice pool reaches 0, you lose control, you cast spells without restraint. You want to use spells for absolutely every single purpose possible, even when deeply inappropriate to do so. It's wild overkill for the situation. You can only cast spells as a fast cast, which means you will always suffer the moderate complication, which might increase to major complication if you're doing this more than once in a scene. So you can see how fast casting is going to come up for your character, even when you're trying to not use it. Basically, if you reduce down to 0 curse dice, you are going to be fast casting at that point. To get back on your feet, to recover that curse die, to end your damnation, resolve the effect, you need to make a sacrifice. Even non-spell actions are considered fast casting, but with the physical attunement. So, to resolve this damnation, you must sacrifice meaningful to your character based on their major path. Taking the loss status effects, if a major path requires sacrificing something physical. We've gone through a few of the possible status effects that you might suffer: agony, burned, terrified, and the like. But let's go through what these damnations are, because they differ depending on what major path you chose for your character. If you chose Sorcerer, the lineage, as your major path, you must sacrifice energy, resources, or time. It typically results in a status effect like destroyed reputation, exhausted, lost, slowed, or one injury. If you're an archivist, you need to sacrifice knowledge, sanity, or secrets, and that typically leaves you confused, drained, lost again, or terrified. If you are faceless, your sacrifice needs to be personal injury, safety, or security, and the status effects you will take one of agony, loss, or stunned, for example, or an injury. We will go on. If you're a sorcerer of the network family, you need to sacrifice bonds, connections, or trust. Once again, you can take the loss, the unexpected favor status effect, or untrustworthy. Premier. Well, there's a popular family. For that, you need to sacrifice your anonymity, your integrity, or respect. And that will typically lead to you taking a status effect such as Crestfallen, Destroy Reputation, or, again, Loss. Reeves now, our blood-sacrificing necromancer druids. You need to sacrifice something to do with death. Maybe actually kill someone. Your health, or something's life. And that typically leads to status effects like bleeding, drained, or loss, or an injury. And finally, we get to the Unburdened, that we did a video about last week, where you need to sacrifice art, creations, mementos, and that will lead to status effects such as ennui, loss, or being unlucky. Now, in all cases, and I think I mentioned this in the other deep dives, but I'll mention it again, you can resolve these things narratively. Damnations do not have to be resolved mechanically. What I talked about last time was how when we released the manuscript to backers of the Kickstarter, there were some people who really leaned on the narrative side, and there were others who really wanted mechanical breakdown. And so what we've done in the Curseborne core book, in the revised manuscript that customers will get when they buy the book, or even if you pre-order it now, this is the version you will get, ultimately, is we provide both. We provide that mechanical resolution that I've just explained to you, and we provide narrative options as well. Because not everyone always wants to apply a specific status effect. Not everybody wants to sacrifice something very specific each time. Sometimes you just want to narratively resolve it. Sometimes you want to skirt over something, because if it's something that comes up repeatedly in a game, maybe you want to skip it. So the point is, we provide options in the book for both mechanical and narrative, and I think that clarifies things. Certainly from my teasers of the system on the Onyx Path Discord, people seem to have appreciated that. Now, I think that more or less covers it, but the last thing I will touch on is Torments. As you know, every single accursed lineage has Torments, and you can create your own that are appropriate for your lineage, but there are 3 in the core book for Sorcerers, and those 3 are Curiosity Kills. So a Torment, when you fulfill it, gains you 1 curse die or 1 momentum. It's another form of sacrifice, if you like. Curiosity Kills. At the core of their nature, Sorcerers are curious. This constant thirst drives them to pursue increasingly ambitious goals. A character with this torment cannot pass up an opportunity to investigate something dangerous. When she gives into the torment, she cannot take any action that does not further her descent into a dangerous situation for the sake of learning something new. She does this heedless of her friends, enemies, or the consequences. Obtaining it still won't make her happy. So if you take that torment, it's on your sheet. It's up to you when you activate it. It's just another way of earning those momentum, those curse dice. You've got Cursebound as well. Sorcerers are dabblers, and they are constantly prodding, and that often comes back to bite them. Whenever a character succumbs to this torment, they gain the unlucky status effect as curses enwreathe them. If the character already has that status effect, the complication upgrades to moderate from it, because it's typically a minor complication. If they already have a moderate complication, it becomes major. Then you've got Unchecked Hubris. Sorcerers may have stolen their power, according to their origins, but the fact is they got away with it. A character with this torment thinks they can get away with absolutely anything, and when they succumb, they will try to do something they probably shouldn't. That can range from taunting an incredibly powerful foe, trying to steal a priceless artifact in plain sight, and the story guide should bribe players with suggestions of terrible ideas that will satisfy this torment. So as you can see, Sorcerers are very much tied to, as I mentioned earlier, that addiction cycle, that idea of I need that one hit because it's going to make me feel good or it's going to empower my ability to cast this spell. That is the whole part, or idea, I should say, of playing a Sorcerer in this game. You are basically pushing the limits of your power every single time you do it. Certainly if you want to embrace the Damnation aspect of being a Sorcerer. I hope this has been very useful. Next week we will do another live character creation session, so I look forward to seeing you then. Until next time, thank you very much, and do check out Curseborne on BackerKit if you haven't already pre-ordered. Bye bye.